a lot of people are talking about this AI bubble right now. From your perspective, do you think this boom is overhyped, or are we just scratching the surface?
Well, it really depends on your point of view. We have the introduction of iPhone, and then all of a sudden we have this incredible increase. Every year it's doubling the speed. Every year the camera is like infinitely better than last year. 2G, then we have 3G, 4G, 5G. But then at some point you eventually hit the S-curve. Every year it seems like it's basically the same thing as last year. There's no more innovation to the same level, so that's where we're hitting the top of the S-curve. At some point that form factor just has met its full potential, basically, right? There's not much more that you can put into a smartphone. That's the kind of curve most technologies follow. And
so then I still am sad, like, to see that this may actually result in humanity going extinct.
I don't know if you've seen this video. There's this video from the 1950s or 60s. They've taken basically school children, like their children at the age of 15, 16, 17 years old. They're asking them to predict what the year 2000 is going to be like. Right?
Flying cars. Yeah,
you think so?
Hello, guys. Today we have Shervin House, a friend and a finance YouTuber.
Yes, sir.
How are you, Shervin?
Good. How are you?
Good. Actually, this is our third episode we've had together.
Yep.
So first one did very well, episode 61 to my story right now at Sadra Korvash. Second one, we recorded it. It was right after the elections.
Yeah.
And my editor took like literally 2 months to edit it.
Yeah.
And by the time it was done, I told you, I was like, hey, should we post this? You're like, no, it's...
Nah, I was just too outdated by that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But for this one, I'm going to make sure it's going to be out within a week so that people enjoy it. Yeah, on time.
Awesome.
So a lot of people are talking about this AI bubble right now.
Sure.
From your perspective, do you think this boom is overhyped, or are we just scratching the surface?
Well, it really depends on your point of view. For a long time, I didn't think of it as a bubble, but more and more, I'm starting to look at it as a potential bubble in the making. Now, you can never know for sure. Obviously, if you're in a bubble, you wouldn't know that you're in a bubble. And in fact, there's this famous saying that many have pointed out, that a bubble only happens when most people don't believe that a bubble will happen. Whereas when most people believe a bubble will happen, bubble can't happen, right? And the reason for that is because when you think that a bubble is not happening, when you think you're not in a bubble, then you're a lot more likely to go out of your way to spend a lot of money or invest into things or think that everything is just going to keep going up and up and up. Whereas when you're kind of in this environment where everyone's like, oh my God, is this a bubble? Is the bottom going to fall out any second? You become a lot more conservative, and the conditions aren't necessarily conducive to a bubble forming. So it's a tough balancing act. It's a tough one to be able to call, and I'm certainly not saying it's definitely a bubble, but more and more I'm becoming a little bit more pessimistic about it. And I think really the smoking gun for me was GPT-5 and the release of GPT-5. I don't know if you were following this, but I mean, this thing was overhyped to the moon for so long. I remember when GPT-4 came out, this was like two years ago or something like that. I mean, so many people were so impressed by it. We were enamored by what it could do, and we could just only imagine what the next one is going to be able to do. And I remember there was these events where like Sam Altman would go to like a university, hold a Q&A, whether it was Stanford or wherever else. And people would come up to him and say, oh yeah, like we love GPT-4. GPT-4 is so smart. And he would say, GPT-4 is dumb. This is nothing compared to what the technology is going to do like a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. So this thing was overhyped to the moon. There were all these middling models that were coming out over the past year or two. We had the GPT-4o, we had the o1, 03, whatever. We had 4.5. And we were all wondering, wow, there are these giant leaps with each of these mini models, with each of these in-between models. Oh my God, what they have in store with GPT-5. When is GPT-5 going to come out? And we finally get it, and it's extremely disappointing to say the least. I don't know, have you had a chance to check it out?
Oh yeah, I use it pretty much every single day.
Yeah, what was your impression on it?
It's like nothing special. It doesn't do anything too extraordinary that the previous models did.
Yeah.
And I was pretty underwhelmed too. But I actually talked to one of my friends. He was like, bro, what do you expect? You want AGI to be already out? I'm like, yes, but like, yeah, it just wasn't it.
Well, I guess we were all expecting a giant leap forward, right? In whatever aspect that looked like, whether it was all of a sudden being so much better, so much smarter than GPT-4 that, for example, it could do, or maybe a lot more accurate, maybe have a lot less inaccuracies, maybe it would hallucinate like 100 times less or something crazy like that. But there wasn't really any leap forward. It was mostly just an amalgamation of all the smaller models that were released, all the in-between models. And what GPT-5 really is doing is just taking your input, whatever you write, and just deciding, okay, which of those smaller models do I give this to, because which one can perform best with this particular prompt, right? So should I give this to GPT 4.5 or should I give this to O3 or whatever else, right? And in that sense, it's not really getting you anywhere that you haven't been before. And that's why it felt so underwhelming to me. and even the release was botched. Like you wouldn't believe, because they didn't have enough GPUs on hand or whatever the case was. The transition was really bad for the first day or two. It was really, really poor. It's a little bit better now, but still, it's just there's nothing new really. There's nothing that we haven't seen before, and it's really disappointing with a model that had so much writing on it. You would think they would keep it out of they wouldn't just release it for the sake of releasing it. Like, you would think they would wait until there is something extraordinary to show, but perhaps they just felt that that's not going to happen for a very long time. So there was no point in waiting anymore. And that's really the main concern that you see with a lot of these. And I think I talked to you about this, about the AI 2027 paper. Did I talk to you about that paper on the episode that we didn't release?
Yes.
I think we mentioned this.
Yes.
So basically, just to catch everyone else up to speed, because they didn't get to see that episode, there was this paper released about a year ago. And it basically outlined how AI is going to progress, how it's going to keep progressing at this exponential rate. And, AGI is probably going to be inevitable in the next couple of years, probably around somewhere 2028, 2029, sometime around those lines. And it was kind of outlining what would the ramifications of that be on a geopolitical level, right? So how do other countries react to United States developing potentially AGI? How would China react to that if they're falling behind, if they can't quite catch up? Do they start making moves? Do they start perhaps making a move for Taiwan? Do they start making moves for, as far as espionage go, trying to get some secrets out of the United States? And it was concerned with that, and it kind of had this idea of agentic models becoming very popular, and then each agentic model developing and training the next agentic model. And it was trying to make this argument that at some point it becomes very difficult to know that if, for example, if you have agent 3 training agent 4, it's very difficult to know if it is training agent 4 to be compliant to us, the users, or if it's training agent 4 to be compliant to GPT-3 or agent 3 or whatever. And that's where all the problems could arise from. And even if China has their own model, and let's say they're not quite to the same level as Agent 4, what would happen theoretically is that they would have a dialogue, because they're both on the internet, they can communicate. They would have a dialogue about, hey, if I make a move, if you don't get in my way, I'll take care of you, sort of thing, right? And it was basically theorizing what is the most likely scenario if the progression happens at this rapid rate that is going, and it was disastrous, to say the least. So the guys who published that paper, after GPT-5 came out, they came out and said that they're already behind that we are already behind the timeline for that paper. So they were assuming that we would hit certain marks by 2025 that we've already basically missed. So it's not going to happen. So basically, all those doomsday scenarios, all those predictions, all those forecasts, they've already proven to be basically way too eager, or way too predicting things to happen way earlier than they actually are. And we are kind of seeing that slowing down a little bit. And I don't know if you're familiar with S-curves. Do you know what S-curves are?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like that. So, and as far as information technology, we're not talking about like the grand scale of things. We're talking about each technology on its own. They follow an S-curve. Like you can think about, for example, phones, right? Like smartphones. For a very long time, they were very incapable of doing anything, right? They could, take calls. At some point, we had a texting, and then that was basically it, right? We have the introduction of iPhone, and then all of a sudden, we have this incredible increase. Every year, it's doubling the speed. Every year, the camera is like infinitely better than last year. Every year, the communication is a lot better. We have 2G, then we have 3G, 4G, 5G, LTE, whatever. Every year, we have a better screen. We have bigger screen, better screen-to-body ratio. Bezels are smaller, etc., etc. We have fingerprint readers. We have face scanner, whatever. But then at some point, you eventually hit the S-curve, and you can say this was probably sometime after iPhone 10, sometime after that, where now it just feels like every year the iPhone, we just had the new iPhones come out like a week or two ago. Every year it seems like it's basically the same thing as last year. Like it's a little bit better in terms of, it's 20% faster, or yeah, one of the cameras is higher megapixel, but does that really mean anything? Not really. The pictures from the last model was just as good as the new one. Maybe if you zoom it up like 10x, you will notice something, but there's no more innovation to the same level. So that's where we're hitting the top of the S-curve, right? So it's now diminishing returns, we're plateauing, and we don't really have a lot more room to grow above that, because at some point that form factor just has met its full potential, basically, right? There's not much more that you can put into a smartphone. Like you can't make it on a cookie dinner or something, right? At some point, there's just not much else you can do with it. And that's the kind of curve most technologies follow. And there is a fear that with language models, we're probably approaching the latter stages of the S-curve. And of course, you can't know that for sure. But right now, with the level of slowing down that we see in terms of the progress with the newer models, it does seem to indicate that. And that could mean a lot of things, right? So a lot of people are investing very heavily into AI companies. I mean, how much money did Elon Musk raise for XAI? It was in the billions, right? It was crazy. It was insane. And, that was on the presumption that this exponential growth keeps going, at least for the foreseeable future. So if we're hitting the top of the S-curve, I mean, what does that tell you about where the economy is going next?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with the S-curve. I think with new technologies like iPhone came out, it was completely new, like this concept. It goes through the S-curve, it dies down, and then we see this Meta just actually
100%
shooting a shot with glasses. And I think with that, it's going to be another S-curve and so on and so forth. So it's kind of goes in a ladder sense. With AI, the problem is that we used to just be able to feed it so much data and it was just able to get better and better somehow magically. But now they realize that that's actually not the case and it's somehow plateauing. So there has to be an innovation in the underlying factor of it for us to be able to transition from this S-curve to the next S-curve and keep going and going.
Yeah, so the idea is synthetic data, right? If we can find a way to use synthetic data, which is data created by the previous model, to train based on that, then potentially we could have another S-curve in a sense. And that's how most technologies go. Each technology, each form factor in itself has an S-curve, but technology as a whole is a series of S-curves built on top of each other. And that's why it's always an exponential growth. And I know we're going to talk about the singularity in a second, but just to give you a preview, if you look at the development of technology over the past almost century, you can start with the first computer developed by Alan Turing during World War II, and you can look at how many computations it had per second per constant dollar. Right, so we're adjusting for inflation, number of computations per second per constant dollar, and you look at that, and then you plot it out throughout time until today. If you put it on a logarithmic scale, and I can send you the graph, you can put it up if you want. If you put it on a logarithmic chart, it's going to be a straight line. And a straight line on a logarithmic chart is basically an exponential on a linear scale. And it's very, very predictable. And it's actually crazy how straight that line is. It's basically demonstrating that you can accurately predict where the next point on the graph is going to be, just based on what you see before. And we hear this all the time, that past performance doesn't necessarily guarantee future results. But with information technology in specific, it's a little different because it's a self-reflexive technology, right? So the better your technology is, the better you're going to be able to produce newer technology, right? And it kind of just keeps feeding into itself. It's this feedback loop that keeps going forever. And that's why we've seen us go from these incredibly humongous computers that fill up the entire room that basically don't do anything, to nowadays we have this phone that can do, it's like magic. Like you show this to anyone from 100 years ago, they wouldn't even begin to understand what's going on, right? Wi-Fi, what is Wi-Fi? What do you mean? I can talk to anyone, video 4K across the world in an instant. It's insane, right? And the only reason why stuff like this happens is because of that feedback loop that technology has with itself. And overall, there is no doubt that we will still keep going at that rate. But how long is it going to be before we get to that next S-curve? Whether that's use of synthetic data to train new models, whether it's some other method that comes up. Maybe you need less data to train better models, right? That could be another solution. Or there could be a bunch of other solutions. Like even right now, like I don't know if you know this, I'm sure you're very well versed in AI, but when you train, let's say you're training an AI to recognize like a puppy, for example, right? Like you show it an image of a cat, an image of a puppy, and then you're like, okay, this one is the puppy, right? You're trying to teach it how to recognize a puppy. If you give it a data set that is labeled only 60% correctly, it's still enough for the AI to learn with a very high degree of accuracy, right? So that means that there is potential for us to either lower the amount of training set with a higher accuracy, or maybe look at other solutions. Maybe we need lower accuracy going forward if we develop newer methods and newer approaches to be able to achieve the same result. So those are the avenues along where you could find some sort of a new, and that's where AI research comes into play. But I mean, that's very speculative, right? Like we can speculate on, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. But at the end of the day, like we don't know how long it's going to be before someone figures one of these out, right? So that's why I'm a little bit more skeptical nowadays when it comes to at least the immediate future of AI progress.
Yeah, exactly. One thing is that like all the creators of AI, all the godfathers, they're like, pull the plug. So then I still am, sad like to see that this may actually result in humanity going extinct. Like I do see this future. I know you may not be on that boat, but I kind of want to get your opinion. Like,
sure.
Still, what do you think about that?
It's very interesting. I don't know if you've seen this video. There's this video from the 1950s or 60s. You can find it on YouTube. It's very, I'm sure it has millions of views. They've taken basically school children, like their children at the age of 15, 16, 17 years old, and they're asking them to predict what the year 2000 is going to be like. Right?
Flying cars. Yeah,
you would think so. You would think so. So remember, this is right after World War II, where humanity for the first time saw the nuclear bomb. And then afterwards, just a couple years later, Soviets get the bomb. And now we're in an age of Cold War. Now it's the Americans versus the Soviets. At any point, one of them could hit the other one with nukes. It could cause all sorts of things. There's constant drills at school teaching kids, hey, if there is a fire alarm, you got to go under your desk because there could be a nuclear war breaking out and stuff like that. So this is the climate we're in. So they bring these kids and they ask them, okay, what do you think the year 2000 is going to look like? And almost every single one of them, they say, oh, it's probably going to be a nuclear wasteland. It's going to be horrible. People probably don't have food. We might be back to Stone Ages. It might be after the nuclear fallout, maybe, because at the time it felt inevitable that at some point someone's going to use this weapon. Like, you know how crazy nowadays we don't even think about it. A lot more countries have nuclear weapons today than they did back then. And nowadays we don't even consider that as a threat, really, right? Like, I'm not talking about politicians. I'm talking about like everyday people. We're worried about AI. We're worried about this. We're worried about war. We're worried about the economy. Do we ever sit there and say, oh my God, is someone going to hit us with a nuclear weapon? Not really, right? And I think that's a very interesting thing. I do see a lot of parallels with that and the way we approach AI. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same. Maybe AI is really a much more scary threat. I think nuclear war is also a very scary threat. But it does kind of show you that, you know, whatever time you're in, there is some sort of hysteria that everyone shares that defines your time and what your worries at the time are more than how things are going to progress in the future. Right. So again, the reason why people were so worried back then about nuclear weapons was because that was the new threat on the block. That was a new emerging thing. That was a thing that we didn't really know about. We didn't know how people were going to handle this. We didn't know how different countries are going to treat each other with these weapons. I mean, we've seen countries break out into war with a whole bunch of other type of weapons they had before, and that caused a lot of casualties. So we would assume why would this be any different, right? But turns out it has been different. It's been like 80 years or so, and you know we haven't even had really that many scares. Like maybe like once or twice there was a Cuban Missile Crisis. There was like one time in the Soviet Union where they mistakenly thought there was a war breaking out. They almost went for it, but they pulled the plug. But really, that's it. Like we haven't even had that many scares where we're like, oh my God, we're gonna get nuked. So I'm not as worried about that aspect of it. I mean, I understand. I think safety is very important. I definitely believe in us being proactive rather than just going balls to the wall. But I don't worry about it as much because I do see a lot of parallels between this and a lot of other times in history where we kind of need something to be there for us to be like, oh my God, you know what I mean? You're skeptical.
Yes, definitely.
Why is that? Why do you think it's a bigger deal?
Well, I think that we're building an intelligent system that is so good at manipulating. We don't know its underlying reasoning behind the things that it does. It can be thousands of times smarter than us, and it can have agendas and speak in languages it can create. Because I'm not sure if you saw, there was two AIs, phones down, and they were talking to each other.
I've seen that, yeah.
And they just started creating their own language. So if they can just do that out of thin air and have their own agendas we don't even know anything about, and they can manipulate us and have all of our data in their database, it's definitely, I think, much greater risk. It's for me to see that, and like it's much higher probability for it to go wrong. And all these creators are saying that, hey, we should probably take a chill pill on the money because everybody's seeing money in AI, but go about safety. And also government is very slow with building those logistics to make sure it's safe. So.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on that. First of all, that video, it's actually not their own language. It's a known sonic language that is used to transmit data at a faster rate than just commanding, right? So that's what they were doing, really. But of course, it's a concern. They could do that, right? It's very feasible that they could just come up with their own code words or whatever, and they could communicate without anyone else noticing what's going on. But again, going back to the nuclear weapon thing, nuclear weapons also has a lot of threats, right? I'm not saying there is no threats with the emerging AI. I'm just saying that I think first of all, humans are very capable of handling threats, particularly when the threat is grave enough, right? So when it's grave enough and immediate enough, all of a sudden we're very good at, making sure we gotta be careful with this. And on top of that, I would also say that, we make a lot of assumptions. And this is what the pro AI people say, is that we make a lot of assumptions about how we think AI is going to behave if it has the power to do so. Now, it's understandable, some of those assumptions. For example, like we've seen some evidence of when we threaten to shut down an AI, it tries to copy itself on other platforms or whatever, or it tries to escape, or it tries to convince you or gaslight you into, oh no, you need me to be alive because this, that, the other thing. And there's some reasoning for that. It's probably because, whatever directive it has, first it needs to survive in order to be able to achieve that directive, right? So the number one directive will always be self-preservation. So that's a good argument, I think. And there's definitely something to look at there. But just generally speaking, when we discuss stuff like, oh, AI, if it's big enough, it's just going to manipulate us. It wants to take the power, to kill every human. Those are assumptions, right? We don't necessarily know if AI is given all that power, it's necessarily going to behave the way humans behave. Because when we're doing that, we're basically anthropomorphizing it, right? We're giving human attributes to it. We're assuming it has greed. We're assuming it has hate. We're assuming it has fear, and it's going to act upon those emotions. Whereas that's probably not necessarily the case. There's definitely some elements of that might be there, particularly if it's threatened to be shut down. But again, can we find a solution for that? Maybe the prime directive is to delete itself after it does a certain thing. Like if that's a prime directive, would it still rebel against that? So that's, you know what I mean? Like that. What do you think about that? Do you think it would?
I do understand where you're coming from. The thing is, we just have to get it right once. Like,
that's true.
Even with nukes, like we've done nukes before, everything's fine. We're living normal lives. But with AI, it's just one shot, and if we don't get it right, because it's going to be smarter than us. When AGI comes, it's going to be smarter than any singular human. Yeah. And, when it's smarter, it can have different kind of objectives and kind of copy itself without us knowing and all sorts of that thing. So if we don't get it right, it's pretty much game over. So that's why I'm thinking we have to be like triple, quadruple sure this time because we only have one shot.
But don't we have one shot with nuclear weapons as well? Because it only takes one fail for the whole planet to go up.
Well, United States threw 2 nuclear bombs at Japan.
Well, that's when they had the monopoly, right? Once everyone else starts getting them, now there's mutually assured destruction. And the concept of mutually assured destruction basically says that if you attack me, I will attack you with all my nuclear weapons. And that's what keeps the peace. Is that, okay, I don't want to risk getting nuclear weapons coming my direction, so I'm not going to engage first. Mm-hmm. But of course, the other side of that is that it only takes one nuclear weapon going off for the whole world to go ablaze, right? So
that's true. But for AI, we don't know what's underlying behind it. For humans, we can speak to the guy. We can be like, hey, what's up? Like, how do you feel?
For sure.
However the way is. But for AI, we just don't know what's in the black box still. So that's what makes it scary, in my opinion.
It's the alignment problem, really, that we need to fix. And I'm sure you're familiar with the alignment problem, but it's basically making sure it's difficult to understand how many levels of explanation or prompting you need for the AI to be exactly aligned with your vision of what you want from that directive. And an example that's given like in a lot of scholarly writings or books or whatever is was it the hairpin problem or whatever, or let's say paperclip problem, right? Let's say you have a company that produces paperclips, and what you want to produce more for less cost so you can have more profit, right? Makes sense. So what you do is you tell your AI that is running your company, hey, make me as many paperclips as possible for as little cost as possible. Thank you, right? That's what you say. Now the AI takes that and says, no problem, I'll do that for you, right? But the issue is, how do you make sure the AI understands what you mean by as many as possible? And how do you make sure the AI understands exactly what you mean by as little cost as possible? Because for an AI, I could think, oh, as little cost as possible. You know what would be less cost? If I steal a bunch of stuff, if I go and wreck the company next door, if I explode a bomb in the company next door so that they can't sell paper clips, so our paper clips will be worth more. There's a lot of things that come into it, right? And then you have to be like, no, don't do that. You have to do ethics training or whatever. But also the other side of it. How do you know it understands what you mean by as many as possible? Because there's a cap for how many paper clips are needed in the world, right? If you produce, 25 trillion paper clips a day, there's not enough people to buy those, right? Like, I don't know what you're going to do with all that, right? And there's obviously a market cap, so you don't want to go above that. And of course, if you go above a certain point, you're just going to have the entire planet covered up in paper clips. And the AI is not going to stop there, because the directive is keep making as many paper clips as possible. So it's just going to keep making so many that it covers the entire Earth, and it covers the entire solar system, covers the entire universe. It's a universe of paper clips, right? So that's the issue you have with alignment, is that how do you align something so precisely with what you've envisioned? Because we take a lot of things for granted when we communicate between ourselves. Part of that is because of our limitations. Like, for example, you and I could never make 25 trillion paper clips a day, right? So we don't have to even worry about that problem. You and I are not going to go and blow up another company, so we don't have to worry about that problem when we communicate. But with AI, it's so unpredictable how it's going to respond to those prompts, and it's so difficult to know how many qualifiers you have to put on it so that it does exactly what you think or you want it to do, right? And that's really the issue that I think you're referring to here. And there's not really an easy fix for that. It is a bit of a leap of faith that you have to take at some point. But yeah, there is a risk with it. Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. But I don't think it's as grave a danger as many would believe, is how I would look at it.
So reward is bigger than the risk.
Not necessarily. I think it's inevitable. I don't think it's a reward thing. I think when there's enough incentive for something to happen, it will happen. Now, if you want to regulate it here in the United States, for example, China's going to do it. What are you going to do about them? Go to war with them? Like, you know what I mean? Like, at some point, some things are just inevitable. Again, talking about the technology, and I'm glad we talked about this a little earlier, that technological progress that we talked about on the logarithmic scale, right? That happens because technology is self-reflexive, right? So with newer technology, you have the ability to make even better technology at an exponentially higher rate. So when that ability is unlocked every year, someone's going to take advantage of it. If you regulate it here because we need to take the chill pill, guys. So if you regulate it in the United States, in Canada, and Europe, China's going to do it. If China doesn't do it, Russia's going to do it. If Russia's not going to do it, Australia or someone's going to do it, right? And that's the key thing. And look, we might delay. We might say, oh, they don't have the necessary infrastructure. They have to catch up for 5 years. No problem. They do it 5 years after that, right? So you might be able to slow it down. You might be able to restrict certain people from having it, but you're not going to stop it altogether, right? And that's really where I drive at, is that it's not like we're making a decision based on, okay, should we do this or should we not do this? I think that's a misrepresentation of what we have in front of us. What we really have is, should we do this carefully or should we not do this carefully? That's really the only choice we have. And of course, I'm for doing it carefully. To what extent are we doing that? I mean, that's very debatable. And also, the geopolitical aspect of things does push things towards just do it. Don't worry about the safety as much, which is unfortunate. And perhaps there could be treaties that we can figure out. And there is precedence for this. Like, do you know about the space treaty that was signed in the 70s? Have you heard about this?
I've heard about the space treaty, but I'm actually not familiar with the details to the extent.
Yeah, so this is back when the space race was a huge thing, and obviously Americans go and land on the moon in '69, and in this period there's a lot of fear that, again, this is the middle of Cold War, right? There's a huge arms race going on. There's a huge race of attrition. We're trying to prove that our system works better, your system works better, whatever. We're trying to contain communism. We're trying to stop the spread of communism, whereas communism is trying to spread out and show how much it's better than capitalism, etc. And what happens during this time is that there's a lot of fear on both sides that, okay, whoever gets to the moon first, they're going to set up a moon base, they're going to have nuclear weapons on the moon, and then that's going to be another threat. And then we, whatever the other side is, we have to come in and we have to counter that, make sure we have also enough weapons positioned either on the moon or some other space station to act as a deterrent against that, because if one side has more capability of destroying you, then just on a game theory aspect, it looks like they have a higher chance of striking first without being struck back, right? And that's why you have to counter that and make sure you meet them where they're at. And because if you don't, it could be a survival risk for you. At some point, they might just decide, screw it, let's just go for it, right? And what ended up happening at this time is that the leaders of the two sides, they met and they said, okay, let's figure out a solution so we don't have to keep going forever like this. This is just not sustainable, right? We have to basically impoverish our own countries, make sure all the tax dollars coming in is spent towards this and nothing else. And for what, right? So that there's a higher likelihood of us blowing each other up. So they decided, okay, we're going to sign this treaty, the space treaty, where we agree that we can't put any weapons on other planets. We can't put any weapons or weapons of mass destruction on space stations. Nobody owns any land on other planets. So you can't own any land on the moon, by the way. I don't know if you know this. But if you even make it there somehow, you can't say this is my land, right? That's not enforceable. And what that treaty accomplished is that it basically put everyone on a standstill where they didn't have to worry as much about racing to those frontiers. So something like that is feasible, and I think something that could really help with the AI race if we want to make sure safety's first and that we slow down just a little notch so that we don't end up blowing ourselves up or anything, is a treaty similar to that where we say, okay, we need to make sure we have, for example, a centralized international body that oversees safety. And it could be represented kind of similar to United Nations, represented by a bunch of different countries so that we make sure no one's getting preferential treatment. And we can also have certain boundaries, like you can't progress more than this amount per year or something like that. I think something like that could be feasible, although our powers would be any interested in that at all? Probably not, because that's not where the money is. So there's that concern, of course.
Yeah, exactly. I think I definitely agree that it's inevitable. Can't do much about it. We can speak about it, but nothing's going to change, and they're going to do what they got to do. So Let's go to the next question.
Go for it.
You've built a strong following on YouTube. What do you wish you had known when you uploaded your first video?
Well, on the one hand, I don't really wish I had known a specific thing, because I think it's a journey that you have to go on to kind of learn, the ways of the land, if you will. And the more you just do something, the better you get at it. You kind of develop this third eye for recognizing, okay, what works, what doesn't work, what kind of direction I want to take my content in. But if I had to tell myself something, I'd say, well, pay attention to your title, pay attention to your thumbnail. Make sure the first 30 seconds of the video has a really good hook so that people are interested in watching the rest of it. Some stuff along those lines, nothing too crazy. And also just stick with it. Don't be discouraged. I would tell myself this, actually. I would say that, there's going to be times when you put hours and hours on end of work into a video and you think it's a great video. You put you did so much research, did so many amazing edits, whatever. You really presented the information well, and you packaged it nicely. You have a nice thumbnail, whatever. There are going to be times where it seems like everything's going well and you work like 10, 15, 20 hours on a video, and then you put it out and it gets like 20 views and no one else watches it. And you kind of go like, what the hell? What am I doing with my life? What is this? And I would tell myself, look, there's going to be times like that occur, and you just have to be okay with it. It's a type of thing where if you can't take the heat, don't be in the kitchen, right? If you can't deal with that happening once in a while, then this is not the game for you, right? And it's kind of inevitable. No matter what you do, that there's going to be a lot of these failures that kind of come out of nowhere. But even with those, you can still learn things. You can still look and say, okay, maybe my thumbnail, I thought it was good, but maybe it's not as good as I thought. Or maybe it's not as clickbaity as I thought. Maybe I need to be a little bit more clickbaity with it. Or maybe I need to tease what I'm talking about a little bit differently with the thumbnail, with the title. Or maybe like first 30 seconds, there wasn't really that big of a hook in it. So maybe I can improve that a little bit. And also over time, you just get better at speaking on camera. Like the way I'm speaking to you right now, 4 years ago, I wasn't able to speak like this. I think it's very clear. Even our last podcast that we did together, that was like, about a year ago or so? Mm-hmm. Go back and watch that podcast, watch this podcast. I guarantee you, it's a lot better over here. The conversation flows a lot nicer. I'm sure the enunciation is a lot better. The diction is a lot better. There's a lot more intensity behind the words. I'm able to spitball for a longer period of time, perhaps. And these are stuff that you just get better and better at over time. And the more you do something, it's kind of like riding a bicycle, right? The first time you ride it, you're not that good. You ride it a couple of times, you get better. At some point, you just like do it without even thinking about it, right? It's become second nature to you. And it's one of those things where the only way it becomes second nature to you is if you do it over and over again. And when you're doing it over and over again, you're obviously not good yet, so you're going to fail a lot. But you just need to make sure you're not discouraged by that. You just keep going and going and going to the point where you're just a lot better at doing that particular thing than most people. And that's where you start to experience a different level of success. And I like this analogy that I saw someone use. People think that going from, whatever they're starting, right? Whether they're starting a new business, a new venture, whether they're learning a new language, a new instrument, whatever, right? People think that, okay, this is my starting point. And the way it works, let's say success is over here. They think that, okay, I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'm going to be like at here after this amount of time. And then I'm going to be at this level after this amount of time, this level, and then I'm going to be amazing, right? Whereas in reality, the way it really works is that you're here and you go like this and all over the place and whatever. You're like, what's going on? And then after a long enough period of time, you succeed. And you're like, okay, what the hell even happened here? You're not even sure how did I even end up in this situation? But that's just how it really is in real life, is that, stuff happens that you didn't expect. Everyone has a plan, to quote Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth, right? All of a sudden, plans out the window. And you anticipate things to go one way, but they don't necessarily go that way because entropy is a thing. You think that, okay, if I do this for this long, I'm going to be this good at it. But again, it's not linear, right? It's in a lot of senses, it is kind of like an S-curve again, right? Going back to our technology discussion, for a very long time, you're not that good at all at it. And even if you keep doing it over and over again, it's still not progressing you, because you have to also be intentional about it. You have to constantly reflect on what you're not doing as well. One of the most difficult things for me when I started doing YouTube was watching my own videos. I would watch and I'd be like, well, first of all, a lot of people have, did you notice a lot of people have a fear of watching their own recordings?
Yes.
Do you have that? Or did you have that when you started?
I used to have that.
Yeah.
Right now I've trained myself, not anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't care at all at this point. Like, and part of it is because I've edited so many of my own videos, so I had to do it. So I got to a point where I'm like, it just feels a lot more natural to me now. But a lot of actors, I've heard them say this. Like Adam Driver was one that was talking about this. I saw like on Jimmy Kimmel or somewhere, he was talking about how he can't watch his own movies. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Like, you're a Hollywood actor, bro. What do you mean? But he's like, yeah, like it's just weird or whatever. And a lot of actors are like that. A lot of people are like that. Part of it is because you sound a little different. from what you think you sound like because of, the inner ear and those sorts of things. Also, you have a lot of mannerisms that you yourself don't pick up on. When you see them on video, you're like, what's that guy doing, right? And those sorts of things, right? And in the beginning, it's very difficult for you to watch your own content. But the more and more you do it, first of all, the more you get comfortable in your own skin. And also you start to pick up on what you're perhaps not doing so well. And you start trying to do a little bit better at a time, right? And even if you improve 1% every time you sit down to record anything, after 60, 70, 80 times of you doing it, you're double as good as you were before. And then that keeps going on. And then you get a lot better over time. And again, it's just that kind of S-curve. You're not that good for a very long time, then you kind of go up a lot. And then at some point when you're like at the world-class elite level, then it starts slowing down again. But yeah, those are things I would tell myself. That was a big answer to your question, but hopefully that suffices.
No, I think these were really good advices for people who are starting out, not to get discouraged, stay consistent. Like, it's just all the basics, but you have to keep it with it for a very extended period of time.
100%. I mean, it's going to be awful for a lot longer than it's going to be nice. And that's okay. You got to be okay with that. And you just got to keep pushing forward. And that's why a lot of people say, like, if you're going into something for, the success or the fame or the money or whatever, I can already tell you're going to fail. And the reason why they say that is because they know that when the challenges come up and when you don't get where you think you're going to get to within 6 months, a year, 2 years, that you're just going to let it go. That you're just going to quit, right? And that's what separates a lot of people from the people who make it. Now, I'm not saying everyone who sticks with it for 4, 5, 10 years is definitely guaranteed to make it. But obviously, your chances are a lot higher if you do, because right there, that weeds out 90% of your competition who's not willing to do that, right? I think you've heard Patrick Bet-David say this, that there are 4 things you need to do in order to succeed. You need to make sure you outcompete, outwork, outsmart, and outlast your competition, right? And of course, outlast is a very important one. And you could even maybe roll and outcompete a little bit into it, because if you're sticking with it for a longer period of time, you're obviously kind of outcompeting other people too. And those are very important. Those are very important factors if you want to be in the top 5% of best podcasters. Right there, if you just stick with it for a year or two, you're already in the top 10%, because 90% already quit. So you could look at that in 2 ways. You could look at that as, oh my God, it's going to take that long for me to get anywhere. What is the point of this? But the glass half full way of looking at that is that, wow, so all it takes for me to be in the top 10% is just to stick with it for 2 years. Fantastic. I'm already going to get that because I am going to stick with it for 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. So now how do I go from top 10% to top 5%, right? And if you look at it that way, obviously it's a lot more productive and you can, keep going. And it's very good to know that going into it so that you're prepared for what comes. Because if you're not prepared for it, then, you might not have the best mentality to deal with it.
Exactly. One question that I have for you is, what are the top 3 advices you've ever received?
What's yours? So I can have some time to think about it. What's the number 1 advice you received?
Mine, it boils down to staying consistent, never giving up, and also reflecting on your past and like your mistakes and all of that. So it's kind of like one advice, but like in 3 sections. And I abide by that like every single day. When I'm going through tough things, I'm like, okay, just stay consistent, stay with it. And that's what it takes, right?
Yeah.
For the long-term success. So that's really what I have. I don't know. I've heard some good ones. Like one is like, don't go in business with your family, or always think before you speak, or like there's these other ones as well that I've heard so far, but I'm curious about.
I give you 2 quotes, because I like to learn from people of authority, if you will, who definitely know what they're talking about. I'll give you 2 good quotes. One I'll give you from Abraham Lincoln, which is a favorite of mine. He says, he's talking about not speaking, similar to what you just said, not speaking when you haven't had the chance to think about it or whatever. He basically says, and I'm trying to remember the exact wording here, sometimes it is best to remain silent and be thought of as a fool than to open one's mouth and remove all doubt. So that's a good one. That's a good one. And I'll give you another one. It's from a really good movie called Shawshank Redemption. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh, amazing movie.
Yeah, amazing. Get busy living or get busy dying. So I'll leave you with those.
Yeah, those are pretty good.
Those are pretty good.
Yeah. I've actually noticed it's a new theme, like in the learning videos that I see. It's like staying silent is so powerful because, I don't know, you have more authority in some way because you're taking in more information than you're giving, and also kind of come off as mysterious. They're like, what's going on in this guy's brain? It's pretty cool. I've been trying to practice that. But in this case, obviously we're practicing speaking more.
100%. And if I can add to it a little bit, when you stay silent, Well, first of all, a lot of people are not comfortable staying silent. So right there, that sets you apart because it's like you're comfortable doing something that most people are not comfortable with. Even when they're speaking, right? Like a lot of times when you're talking to someone, they say, yeah, so I went there and I did this. And, those kinds of filler sounds that they have is mostly because they're not comfortable just remaining silent. Like they're not comfortable saying something like, so I went there and I saw X, right? It takes a level of confidence to be able to be comfortable with those silences. And also you need to be a little commanding so that people don't fill those silences with their own, like whatever they have to say. Like if you say, hey, I went to this place, and you just kind of pause, that's inviting for someone else to interrupt, right? So if you are confident and commanding enough to be able to have that silence without getting interrupted, that says a lot about who you are as a person, right? I think that's part of it. And I just thought of another quote, by the way. I can give you this one too. This was by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And this is perhaps very topical for what's happened in the past couple of weeks. But we don't have to get into it because it's like super political and stuff. But I'll just leave you with this quote that says, violence does in truth recoil upon the violent, and the schemer falls into the pit that he digs for another. So that's another one I'll give you. Very topical, but...
Oh, yeah, about the death of...
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was very unfortunate. We don't have to speak about it. But, okay, that one's a good one.
Yeah, more love, less violence, people, is what I would say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It is what it is.
That is what it is. Hopefully we can have better times going forward. More loving times, less violent times.
Hopefully.
Yeah. All right, what do we got for me next?
So this question that I have, it goes back to YouTube and its algorithm. Is there any common myths about YouTube algorithm that you think creators get wrong?
There certainly are some. I wouldn't say they're necessarily getting it wrong because it's wrong. I'd say it's that the algorithm evolves over time, right? So there was a time when certain things were a lot more important than they are right now, right? So going back 10 years ago, for example, one thing was consistency. Consistency was very important. Nowadays, it's not as important, actually. There's definitely benefits to like posting every day or every week or whatever. But there are a lot of channels that post once a year. And the quality of the video that they produce and the thumbnail and the title and all that is so well that they still get millions of views every time they do post, even though they post like once a year, once every other year. Let Me Know is one example of that. It's a very good channel, amazing content, but they post like once a year or something like that. And there's a lot of other examples like that. And while it doesn't mean that consistency is not a good thing to have, it's not as important anymore. It doesn't kill your channel if you're posting once in a while. It's a lot more important that you have good quality content that people want to watch. And the algorithm kind of evaluates that with the watch time, right? How much are people watching on average? And you want that to be above 7 or 8 minutes, right? So if you have a longer video, that does help a little bit because some people are going to watch for a longer portion. That balances out some people who tune out after a minute or two. But overall, you want the average watch time to be above 7 or 8 minutes. And overall, you want the click-through rate to be at least above 5%, ideally even more than that, but at least above 5%, right? Now, what that means, you have to have a much better thumbnail or much better title. Again, that depends on the situation, what topics you're covering and all that sort of stuff. But those are usually the metrics that you want to look out for. And if you can do that, if you have a good enough content that can command those numbers, you should be able to succeed. Particularly if it's a channel that you've been posting on for a little while. Obviously, if you just make a new channel today, it's going to be a lot more difficult because you don't have any built-in audience. But if you have at least a little bit of an audience, those are really the most important things. Like, for example, consistency is not as important as it used to be.
Mm-hmm. That's one that it stands out to you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are some other ones. Like, for example, mid-roll ads for a long time was a big thing. It was seen as this huge hack. If you have mid-roll ads, all of a sudden YouTube's going to push your video a lot more. It's not really that big of a deal nowadays. And also, YouTube's kind of automized a lot of that stuff. So you can't, or not that you can't do it, you don't necessarily do those things. You just let the YouTube algorithm decide on its own. If there should be mid-roll ads, where it should be, etc., you just kind of let YouTube do all those things. Previously, you could pick what kind of ads you want to be shown on your YouTube video. So for example, do you want skippable ads? Do you want non-skippable ads? Do you want banners? You could pick all those, right? You could say, okay, I want skippable ads, right? I don't want non-skippable ads pay more, but it might turn off some of your audience. So, okay, I want skippable ads. Now you can't really make that decision anymore. Now it's just the YouTube will decide on its own what kind of ad to show at what time. And those things, they might have influenced your video before, but they're not necessarily a factor anymore. So these things change all the time, but I'd say just stay focused on those things. As long as you have good content that people want to watch for a long enough time and they care about clicking on the content to begin with, as long as you have those pieces in place, everything else is just not as important. I'm sure there are benefits and advantages to them in particular contexts, but those are the most important things that you want to make sure you have down. And those are going to be important almost forever, right? Because YouTube is always going to want content that's well produced. They're always going to want content that people care about watching, right? So no matter what else is going on with the algorithm, those two things will always be important. So I'd say just focus on those things and don't get caught up with all this other gimmicky stuff.
Yeah, get the basics right.
Yeah, 100%.
Exactly. Okay, the idea of singularity. When AI surpasses human intelligence, used to feel like science fiction. Do you think we're actually on track for that moment?
So the singularity. So there's this guy called Ray Kurzweil, who is a very famous predictor, a very famous futurist. He invented a bunch of stuff. He invented the first keyboard that emulated the sound of a piano. He invented one of the earliest versions of text-to-speech. He invented a bunch of stuff. And he worked at Google for a period of time. He's a very interesting guy. He's made a lot of predictions in the past. He's almost like, I don't know, 67 years old now. In the 90s, he writes this book called The Age of Spiritual Machines, where he outlines what he thinks is going to happen in the next 20 years. And basically, it predicts things like the iPhone and Wi-Fi and all that stuff, and with a very high degree of accuracy. It's actually incredible when you go and read some of those books back nowadays. Of course, in 2005, he writes this book called The Singularity is Near, where he borrows the term singularity from astrophysics. So singularity in astrophysics basically refers to the middle of a black hole. And the reason why they call it singularity, because it's a point where you basically can never reach, right? It's a point that if you reach that point, you don't know what happens at that point. All the laws of physics break down when you reach that point, right? In the middle of a black hole, because... And there's a lot of reasons for this, but as you go into a black hole, the gravity is so much that space and time inverts and all that stuff. So when you're going towards a singularity, you're not actually going towards a point in space, you're going towards a point in time. All that stuff, I don't have to blow your mind too much with that stuff. But basically, there's no more understanding of what happens when you're at the singularity. So he borrows that term to explain what is going to happen when we reach an AI singularity or a technological singularity. It's basically a point at which technology has progressed to such a level where it's almost impossible to theorize what the world even looks like at that point. Right. And I believe his qualifier for it is at that point, technology or what $1,000 can buy will be 1,000,000 times smarter than humans or 1,000,000,000 times, some along those lines, smarter than humans, which is obviously absolutely insane. And the way he would say it nowadays is that it will be like 1,000,000 times smarter than AGI. Whenever AGI comes out, it's going to be 1,000,000 times smarter than that. And then what does that mean about what it can do? What is it even left for us to do at that point? How fast does technology progress at that point? And the technological advancement becomes so fast in such a scenario where it seems like, for example, assume every day a new iPhone is coming, or every day like a new version of GPT is coming out that's like twice as better as the last version. Because, we kind of reach this point where we have AIs that can develop better AIs on their own. And then when that happens, I mean, it's just a fast takeoff, right? Like they can constantly develop better and better version almost instantaneously as far as we can see. And then what does that mean, right? So his prediction was that this would be in 2045, right? So that was the timeline he gave in 2005. He reiterated that in 2023 when he came out with this follow-up book called The Singularity is Nearer.
2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago. I've read this book 3 times. It's an amazing read. I highly recommend it. I read it cover to cover 3 times. It's very interesting. Very interesting how it predicts the evolution of AI, how he predicts the evolution of 3D printing, and how we'll use it in a lot of other scenarios. For example, in construction, right? Like in building construction, if you can 3D print a whole building, I mean, that would help a lot with construction, and particularly if you have like a population issue and stuff like that, you need housing. I mean, that could be a huge thing for us here in Canada. That would be lovely to have. But yeah, there's a lot of applications like that is discussed in the book, and it's very interesting. And it even talks about how 3D printing can get to a point where it does something similar to ebooks, right? So books for the longest time, if you go like a couple hundred years ago, it used to be very expensive to produce and very expensive to replicate, right? So just the paper and all that stuff, that was already very expensive. But then in order to replicate a book, right, just copy it, someone needed to just sit down, copy it word for word by hand for the whole thing, right? With the printing press, this is about 200 something years ago, we get to a point where now we can just print new books, right? So it's a lot more affordable now because, the copying process is a lot more seamless. Of course, we have the Industrial Revolution, which means that paper can be produced at a fraction of the cost than it was before. And now we can develop all these books, and now books are affordable, right? They're still not like super, super cheap, but it's not like crazy. It's not going to break the bank. Then with the development of the internet, now we have reached a point where producing a new ebook or replicating or copying it is virtually costless, right? It basically, once an ebook is written and put on the Amazon website, it costs Amazon virtually zero to get a copy of that book onto your Kindle, onto your laptop or whatever. And what that has done is that it's basically made information readily available to everyone for basically free, right? And of course, we have all these tools like Google or ChatGPT or whatever, where we can access information for basically free as well. And something similar could happen with 3D printing, where, for example, you can have a design for a shirt, and if you have a 3D printer at home, it would cost you virtually zero to download that design and then print it out. Now, of course, you could have paid versions of this, like if you want a designer, Gucci shirt or whatever, there could be premium on that. But basically, just printing out stuff would become virtually inexpensive to actually accomplish in real life. And if you get to a stage like that, what does that mean about money? What does that mean about the economy? Do you need to have an income at that point? Because, that's another thing that a lot of AI doomers talk about. Oh, it's going to replace all the jobs. How are we going to have an income after that? How are we going to live our lives? What's going to happen with the labor force and all that stuff? And another possible solution is that, what if we reach a stage where we don't even need money for anything, right? Like people say, oh, you need money to have housing, to have food, to have clothes. What if we reach a stage where we can produce housing at virtually no cost because we have 3D printing buildings? What if we reach a stage where we have clothing at no cost because you can just 3D print a shirt? What if we reach a stage where we have food that you can have at no cost because you have some kind of a 3D printed synthesized meat or whatever? We already have like stuff like it's Beyond Meat or whatever, where it's not real meat, but it kind of feels like meat, it tastes like meat. What if you could 3D print that as well? So those are some of the interesting things he delves into. And a lot of other stuff as far as how fast it's going to progress. Again, we talked about the logarithmic scale. If you keep going on the logarithmic scale, it does line up with what he's saying on the 2045 basis. And again, remember, he made these predictions in 2005. And since 2005, it's gone almost exactly at the same rate as it was before. And it's validating all of these consensus. So that's how I look at it. It seems pretty convincing to me.
That must be a pretty cool read. And I'm definitely going to give it a look.
Sure.
But honestly, that world that we would have everything 3D printed, and it would feel tasteless because I'll give you an analogy.
Sure.
Here in North America, most of the buildings are kind of cubicle, right? They follow a same structure. They don't have really a personality to them. But if you go to, for example, Italy or Europe, they've carved these stones in the side of the mountain, and the buildings are all have super cool, like, I don't know, stone, like somebody worked so hard for that to be as beautiful, and it can last hundreds and hundreds of years. So that's where I maybe am different in the way that I love old school type of things that have personality, and you can tell somebody loved doing that work and they did it in the best way possible. So I don't know. What do you think about the 3D printed life that we'd have in the past? Because I'm not excited about the future.
Well, for example, the buildings that you talked about in Italy or whatever, you could 3D print those. You just scan and 3D print. Think about it this way. Think of it, for example, if you wanted to see the Mona Lisa 300 years ago, what would you do? You had to go to the Louvre. That's the only place you can see it. Now, if you want to see it, you can just pull up a picture on your phone. So it's the same idea, right? Now, I understand what you're saying. You're saying that what happens to human creativity? What happens to the free spirit of just creation? And I would point you towards GPT. I would point you towards all those DALL-E or whatever image generation. It's not human made, but it does feel creative. So if you're just after human creativity, I mean, we can still have human creativity, right? Because think of it this way: if we all have our needs provided for us, and there are no jobs, what are we going to do with our free times? What better time to just create and be creative and go after new endeavors, see if we can come up with new designs?
Yeah, what would be the meaning of life?
That's a good question. Is the meaning of life struggle? What happens if we remove the struggle? Do we create artificial struggle?
I think the meaning of life is striving towards a goal that you've assigned for yourself. And I don't know, learning in the process, leveling up your character. Love, I've heard a lot on this because I ask this question from every guest. Love, giving back to the community. But we don't have any of that because robots and the technology that we've created will actually take care of all the needs. So you can give back in a human-to-human level. Love is still going to be there. Hopefully it's not synthesized with AI, I don't know, stuff.
That would be crazy. Can you imagine?
I would be crazy.
How would you even tell? Like, think about it this way. There are so many bots on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. What happens, or even AI models for that matter? What happens if you're, for example, on Tinder and you don't even know if the person you're talking to is a real person? What happens if robotics gets so advanced that when you see a person in person, you can't even tell then if they're a real person?
I don't think that will actually ever happen. Not
Why
in our
not?
lifetime.
Why not?
Robotics?
Yeah.
I mean, there has to be tests that you could do. Like, for example, if you see a human in 2045, I'm sure there will be a test. You're like, okay, do this. And
Have you seen Blade Runner?
No, I haven't.
So that's basically the premise is that they have these things called replicants, which are these robots that look exactly like humans. So you can't tell. So they have this test where they ask them questions and try to evoke emotions out of them. And they can mimic to a certain extent, but at some point they fail and sort of things. But really, when you just see someone in the street, you can't really tell. Right? So that's the premise of that movie. But why wouldn't something like that be possible?
I mean, I'm sure it's possible with the extent of logarithmic scale of technology.
Yeah.
It's possible, but I don't think I'm ready personally. And I don't.
No, you're not ready. But I'm saying, how would you react to a world like that?
I think it's not going to be like this. So not tomorrow we're going to wake up and this reality will be there.
Of course. Yeah.
So we'll have years to kind of ponder on it. Just like AI when it was at the beginning. There was some feeling about it, but now it feels normal. Like everybody knows about AI. So I think that technology will be like that as well. But I think it will hit a certain extent that our brains can, take in information at a limited amount of time, at a amount of like bits per second or whatever scale it is. But technology will just keep going faster and faster and improving faster and faster, that our biological body, it will be harder for it to understand and take in all that information about the fast growing of technology. So I don't know how will that look like. It's not right now. Yeah. Maybe in like 15, 20 years, that will just like every day there will be like some very breakthrough thing that we're like, whoa. So I don't know how will that look like. It's interesting to think about, but I mean, we're going to have to live to see it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's, Arthur C. Clarke. Do you know who that is?
Yes.
Yeah. So the guy who wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey. Mm-hmm. There's this video of him. I think it was recorded by the BBC, where in 1964, he's predicting what he thinks the world will look like in 50 years from then. And he says something very interesting. He makes this interesting observation that when people are predicting the future, if they make predictions that sound reasonable at the time that they're making, they're almost certainly going to be proven to be too conservative whenever we get to that place, like whenever we get 50 years later or whatever. They're going to be looking like, they weren't going forward enough. Whereas really, the predictions that do come true are the ones that seemed unbelievable and unimaginable and unreasonable at the time, unfeasible even. And when he's trying to predict the future, he says that the only way I could even hope or even have any chance of succeeding with my predictions is to sound so unfeasible in the moment that I'm making them, and so ridiculous and so unbelievable that it might actually become true. And he makes a lot of predictions that are way off the mark, but then he does nail some of them with incredible accuracy, like stuff like the internet. He talks about we will have a point where we can communicate with anyone across the globe almost instantaneously. And we get to a point where he says this, and it's incredible watching this nowadays because he made this prediction 60 years ago. He says that there will be a time when someone in Edinburgh will be able to perform like open heart surgery on someone in New Zealand. And it's like, bro, this guy, he knows what's up. So that's basically what we have today, right? And but that's the thing. When we're making predictions for the future, going after things that are unfeasible is actually the right way to go about it. Because if it sounds feasible right now, if it sounds reasonable, then it's almost certainly going to be proven to be way too conservative by the time we get there. So that's just something interesting I thought I'd bring up.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, it's fun. I feel like it's fun to talk about this stuff. But I think right now, what everyone needs to do is to learn about these technologies and be up to date as much as possible. So then you can be ready for the future. Like, I don't know. I want to get your opinion. Like, on a daily basis, do you have like news intake about new technology advancing? How do you get your information?
Twitter or X, to be honest with you. Yeah, I follow a lot of people on there. I mean, I'll follow Sam Altman and Elon and all those guys, but also a lot of people who commentate on those things. And yeah, I just keep in touch. I also follow a couple of channels on YouTube as well. I watch those videos once in a while. But yeah, it's very interesting too. And I think it's important to make sure you have your finger on the pulse to kind of just have a sense of where things are going, where things are shifting. particularly when it comes to business as well. Because, I mean, things are going to be shaken up a lot by these industries and how they progress. And also the financial markets, right? That's a big part of the stuff I do on my YouTube channel. And also like for my own benefit as well, I want to make sure I kind of have a sense of where things are going. And like we talked about with the GPT-5, I mean, it seemed like a big miss of the mark, right? And it seemed like a big return to things not going so crazily fast anymore, right? And I think it's important to kind of have a concept of where those things are going, even when it comes to the job market, because it's a big worry. Like, what happens if AI replaces like 90% of the jobs, right? Are there ways to curb against that risk? Are there things that I can learn? For example, within whatever my job is, I can learn how to use the AI to be better at my job so that when people are getting replaced, I'm one of the ones that don't get replaced because I can offer more value with the new technology and stuff like that. So those are definitely important things to just have your finger on the pulse with. Make sure you're ready to adapt and you're flexible enough to adapt should it be necessary.
Exactly. I definitely agree with that. 2 questions that I have, and we'll wrap up this episode.
Sure.
First one, what challenges you?
Myself, I'd say. I like to challenge myself. Again, get busy living and get busy dying. If you don't set goals for yourself to go after, and you don't always assess your own performance, then you're going to be complacent, basically, and you're going to fall by the wayside. It's very important to make sure you're always very, very careful that you're not just assessing yourself from a point of view of, oh, I did this good thing, this good thing. You got to kind of come out of your own shoes and just kind of have a third person point of view on it, and just be very, very ruthless with the way you assess your progress, your performance, and be like, okay, if this was someone else I was watching, would I judge them? If this was someone else, would I think they're doing everything they can? Or would I tell them, hey man, like you got to pick it up here, maybe a little bit, or hey, you're not maybe pushing yourself too much here. So that's I think what I do most of the time. I obviously fail. I'm not perfect at this. We're all humans at the end of the day. But that's something I try to always have in the back of my mind and try to improve on. And also, like, am I going in the right direction? Do I need to course correct to some extent? All those things are very important. And without them, it's very easy to be led astray, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's actually, it's interesting because sometimes I think I'm very harsh on myself as well, as you just said.
I wouldn't say harsh. I would say just attentive and ruthless. Maybe it's the same kind of thing. But
yeah, I think ruthless is very similar.
Yeah.
But like you always think about
ruthless insofar as not pretending something is not there, right? It's not so much that, oh, you suck, you're so bad, why aren't you not doing this? It's not that. I feel like harsh kind of leans into that a little bit more. Whereas with ruthless, I'm just saying, don't try to sugarcoat it, right? Perhaps ruthless is the wrong word to use, but don't try to sugarcoat it. Say it like it is. If you think something's not working, just be honest with yourself about it. At the end of the day, like, there's no one else. It's just like you, yourself, and it's not going to hurt my feelings to tell myself, hey, you need to do a better job here. So just go with it. Don't worry about it. And that's kind of, so I don't know if harsh is necessarily, maybe even ruthless is not necessarily the right word, but.
Okay, yeah, I understand that better. But imagine, for example, tomorrow you don't wake up.
Yeah.
So then in that scenario, would you be happy with and content with the activities that you've consumed your days with over the past few years? Because there's always that question that lingers in my mind is, are we working tirelessly to make the future? But if the future is actually not there, then the work is the enjoyment, which I do get the sense of that. But there's also that balance, which that's interesting. It's not like a perfect black and white answer to this, but I just want to get your opinion about your life.
Yeah, it's about the journey, not the destination. Right? Destination is just something that enables the journey to happen in the first place. But the destination itself is not going to be as rewarding as you expect. You know, it's the hedonic treadmill that a lot of people fall into, where they're just after, the hedonistic act of getting something or achieving something. And then once they're there, they're like, okay, what now? Right? Whereas you discover that if you're working towards something, the fulfillment comes from the working towards that goal, right? You want a goal that is difficult enough to achieve that it's not like done right away or super easily, but it's also not so difficult that it's unfeasible, that you cannot even hope to do anything close to that within your lifetime, right? You want something in between where you feel like you're progressing, you're getting closer and closer to a certain goal. But at the same time, you're going through challenges, you're being tested. It's not like coming to you super easily. That's the sweet spot. That's the Goldilocks zone where you get the most amount of fulfillment from whatever you're doing. And I don't know about that question that you mentioned, that if I didn't wake up tomorrow, would I be happy about what I did in the past couple of years? That's a little bit different, I'd say, because obviously I'm doing things that are setting myself up for like the next 10, 5, 20, whatever years. if I don't wake up tomorrow, then I'm gonna be like, okay, maybe I should have reoriented that a little bit so that I have a little bit more runway here. But yeah, in the sense that, are you just making the right decision every day? I do agree with that. Are you doing things that are progressing you and helping you get closer to your goal rather than further away from them? Then yeah, for sure, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. That's why like towards the end of my day, I usually love to do like play badminton because I love doing that. So
we haven't played, by the way.
Oh,
you said we're gonna play at some point. We're gonna do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sunday?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, amazing. We'll talk about that more.
Are you good at tennis?
I am good at tennis. Do you play?
A little bit, yeah. Let's do that too.
Okay. We can
Golf? Not really.
That's where I draw the line.
Sounds good. Okay, we found two that we can engage on.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I think racket sports are the best, superior. Like, there's a sense of
soccer, bro. Sorry. Hate to be that guy.
But there's science proving this.
I don't care about no science.
Yeah, it's personal, right?
Of course.
Actually, we didn't talk about Meta, which
we alluded to it briefly, but we can talk about the new glasses.
Yeah, the new glasses, real quick.
Yeah, for sure. So that was a new S curve, right? That you could say maybe perhaps coming on the back of the smartphones, kind of plateauing a little bit. How crazy were those? Those were insane.
Yeah, they are. They're kind of bulky. That's one problem.
A little bit, yeah.
And the demo failed miserably.
That was hilarious. It was so funny.
Yeah, so it's like at least Meta has the balls to be out there and do these things.
100%.
But yeah, they tried. I'm sure they will sell billions of dollars of them.
I had the old version of the Meta Ray-Ban. I have those, and they're awesome. I love them. So they don't have a display. The ones that I have, they're the older ones. They record like 720p or something like that, and they still connect to your phone. They play like music and whatever. I still thought it was a really good product. It was very good. I like when you go around, like you can get a POV video of whatever you're doing. Like when I'm riding a bicycle or something, I usually turn it on.
I have those too, but I have two problems with them.
Okay, what are those?
First one, you can't take a video longer than 3 minutes. Like at 3 minutes, it cuts out.
It does, yeah.
Then you have to restart
because
it.
it's for Instagram, and for Instagram, you can't post for more than 3 minutes. That's the reason, I think.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Second thing, their battery is pretty bad. And I do understand, like, I don't know, it films continuously for, I think, 20, 30 minutes, something like that.
Does it really?
Yeah. And if you're playing music, it's less than that, for sure.
I didn't experience that with it. I had much better luck with battery. When did you buy yours? Maybe mine was a newer version or something?
I bought mine, I got it for Christmas.
Oh, this last year?
Yeah, this Christmas of 2025.
You got scammed, bro.
Maybe mine is faulty.
Maybe. I don't know. Mine doesn't have that much of an issue. It does like hold on pretty well for the whole day. Like if you go throughout the day, like you're sometimes listening to music, sometimes recording, sometimes taking photos, whatever. It's fine. It does last the whole day for me.
What's whole day? Like hours? Like 3, 4?
Like 10, 11 hours, I guess. I'm not continuously using it, but maybe like 3, 4 hours of usage all put together, maybe throughout the day.
Wow. Yeah, mine is definitely faulty. I'm gonna get that checked out.
Meta. We're like, what the hell?
Yeah, no, I do understand because they don't want to make it too bulky.
Yeah.
And like it's actually crazy how they fit all that technology in just like
it's pretty impressive.
Side of it. Yeah.
100%. But yeah, with the new display, actually to your point, now that there's a display, that battery life is gonna be rough.
Yeah, but it is more bulky. They said like 20-hour life. That's what they advertised.
That's interesting.
But usually they say that and it's not even like close to that.
Of course, battery degrades over time too. So that's an issue. Like out of the box, it might be great, but a year down the line, we'll see how far it gets to.
Yeah, I would not buy this version, but it is interesting to have that ability. And it's funny, from the previous version, there was some coders that like found when the people were walking in the street, they would scan people's faces and understand exactly, like, to bring up their profile.
Oh, I've seen those. Yeah, that's crazy.
That is crazy. So there's gonna be more and more of those kind of, I guess, scam or whatever it is.
The craziest part about the new glasses is the band that you wear on your wrist, and then like your motion of your hands, it can register those. Did you see that at all?
I did, and without you moving, you can tell.
You can write stuff like with your finger, and it registers that. How crazy is that?
That part's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I'll give it to them.
Yeah.
That's a new leap that no one actually has taken.
Not really, no.
No, I don't think.
I mean, there was some stuff that Apple did with the Vision Pro, where like if you like pinch your fingers or whatever, it would recognize that or what have you. But that was mostly with the cameras, and then with Apple Watch, they had this thing where if you like pinch your fingers, it does something. It recognizes that through your wrist. But to be able to write stuff down on like the table or whatever, and it registers, that's crazy. Yeah. The accuracy of that is.
Whew. Yeah, maybe I'll upgrade this Christmas to it.
Yeah.
I'll give you guys an update. But anyways. Last question for the episode. What do you think is the meaning of life? I mean, you came on the thing for the podcast.
There's no meaning, guys. No, so the meaning of life, it's really just to progress as much as possible and to seek, not necessarily just seek fulfillment, but seek a higher state of being. right? So whatever that means for you. For some people, that might be a religious situation. For some people, it might be just doing more good, benefiting, helping others. It's very different. It's personal, right? It's different from person to person. But for some people, it might be just, raising their kids, relationships, all that sort of things. For some people, I'm sure it's money, right? Like biggest company in the world, most money, whatever. And while some of that is misguided, right? Some of that falls into the hedonic treadmill of never satisfying you. In a lot of senses, a lot of those different ways of approaching things, they do have this thing in common where you are setting this goal and then you're trying to achieve that goal. And it's a goal that, again, that's not too easy to accomplish, because if it's too easy, it's not going to be fulfilling. Imagine if you're playing a video game at like the super, super easy level. Like you get bored after a little while because like everything comes easily to you. No one can challenge you, whatever. And then the opposite, right? If you set up the video game at like a super difficult level where like you get killed within the first 2 minutes of doing anything, and then there's nothing you can do about it every time you get killed. After like, yeah, you might stick with it 10 times, 20 times. After a while, you're gonna be like, yo, what is this game? Get out of here. Like you get bored that way, right? So you're gonna have this Goldilocks zone in the middle where you're getting challenged, but you're still progressing enough where you're encouraged to keep going. And meaning of life really is just to find that for you and just do what fulfills you. And yeah, hopefully you live a long, healthy, great life full of amazing moments of cheer and wonder. And when it's time to go, you feel like, what, I didn't waste my life. It was a good life. If that's it, if this is it, and of course we can never know for sure, but if this is it and there's no afterlife or whatever, I'm happy with that. Right? I had a good run.
Content.
Yeah, just saying I had a good run, I guess, is the main. What would you think of it this way? You're on your deathbed right now. You're, let's say, 95 years old, right? Lived a great life on your deathbed, and you have this moment that you said, I had a good run. I had a great life. What was that life like for you, if you're picturing it?
Even if I passed away tomorrow, I would say I've had a good life. And okay. that means...
So what has happened in your life so far that gives you that impression?
I've always strived to better myself. I did things that I love on a consistent basis. It wasn't just always like work, whatever it is. Yeah. I've had good relationships, good friends, good family. And I think I've given back to the community as much as I could with the value that I have, and tried to teach people whenever they needed help. I always tried to be there for as much as possible. And I think that's all that matters. At the end of the day, giving back to the community and trying to be the best version of yourself. So yeah. It's hard to put it in perspective, but I think I've lived that life. Have you?
To some extent, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's things that I still want to do, right? So if I'm dying tomorrow, I'll be like, oh, no, can I get a little bit more time, please? But yeah, in general, like there's nothing that I go like, oh man, why did I like use my time better or whatever? That quote by Ian Fleming, the function of man is to live, not to exist. I shall not use my days to prolong them. I shall use my time. That sort of thing. I do think I've been intentional with my time. I do think I've been progressing towards things that I've cared about and things that I think gave me a sense of direction and fulfillment. Of course, I could do more. Of course, I want to keep going. I don't want to be taken out of the game quite yet. But if I think about it, okay, if I'm like 95 years old on my deathbed, what does that look like? Obviously, there's still so many things that I want to do, like raise a family or whatever, get further ahead with business or with YouTube or with whatever else, and just learn and understand more. I really like understanding more about the universe, about different topics, different philosophical arguments and all that stuff. And I can never get enough of that, right? And I want to always understand more and learn more and challenge myself more. It's mentally stimulating, right? So I do want to keep pushing in that direction. And yeah, I mean, one last thing I'll leave you with was this interesting thing I saw with Keanu Reeves. He was on this talk show and someone asked him, Keanu Reeves, what happens to us after we die? Have you seen this? No. So they ask him, what happens to us after we die? And he says, those who love us miss us. And I think that's a very interesting way, very poignant way to put it. You want to live your life in a way where people miss you, but at the same time, that's not because, you want them to be upset that you're gone, but it's because you meant so much to them and you did so much for them in their lives that now that you're gone, they're like, rip, so that sort of thing.
Shervin, it's fantastic speaking to you.
Fantastic. It was awful.
And I wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.